Hi, I'm Mark Wybrow and this is Electronic Cafe, the channel dedicated to electronic music for the lovers of electronic music.
And I'm Andy McNabb. Let's get started. So welcome to Electronic Cafe episode 7. First thing I want to say is again from Mark and I, thanks for the amazing feedback. It's just been brilliant, absolutely loving it. We're growing fast, so thank you. If you love the show, please share it. If you haven't subscribed, do so. In this specific episode, we're looking at a band that created a massive impact in the early 80s, but was very short-lived, and that band was Yazoo. We're going to be looking at some great new music in the hot stuff section, so look out for that, and hopefully you might find some new albums that will inspire you to go out and order some new music to add to your collection. And we'll also be announcing the winner of our competition, where we are going to be giving a lucky subscriber a very limited copy of Rusty Egan's Welcome to the Dance Floor. This album is in gold vinyl. There was only 500 worldwide. That first run is completely sold out. So Mark will be announcing the winner of that very shortly. So stay tuned and enjoy the show.
Vince Clarke is an English synth-pop musician and songwriter. He was born in 1960 in South Woodford in Essex in the UK, and his family later moved to Basildon, Essex, where he formed Depeche Mode with Martin Gore, Dave Gahan and Andy Fletcher. Vince Clarke left Depeche Mode just as their first album, Speak and Spell, was released. As their main songwriter, this was a pivotal moment for Depeche Mode, and, so the story goes, Vince Clarke offered them the song Only You as a parting gift, which they declined. As history shows, Martin Gore took over the songwriting duties in Depeche Mode, and after a few early wobbles has proven to be an incredible songwriter himself, making Depeche Mode the huge international success that they are today. After Depeche Mode, Vince Clarke had a short-lived group called The Assembly, and then he went on to form Yazoo in 1981, and, as we all know, following Yazoo he had a very long and successful career with Andy Bell in the group Erasure since 1985. Although Vince Clarke and Alison Moyet formed Yazoo via an advert in a music paper, they did actually know each other beforehand. They both came from Basildon, and Alison Moyet was in the same class at school as Martin Gore, Andy Fletcher, and also coincidentally Perry Beaumont out of The Cure. You certainly should never let the truth get in the way of a good story. On top of all that, Vince Clarke has also done a number of other collaborations and remixes for artists such as Happy Mondays, OMD, Simple Minds, Goldfrapp, Depeche Mode, Alison Moyet, Blancmange and Soft Cell, just to name a few. He famously reunited and collaborated with Martin Gore back in 2012 on the VCMG album.
So Alison Moyet, what an amazing voice that woman has. Absolutely electrified the pop scene when she appeared with Yazoo. Obviously that was the launch pad of an amazing career. She's sold over 23 million albums, over 2 million singles. She's done 9 studio albums and 3 compilation albums, all charted in the top 30. So it's fair to say she's been an incredibly successful artist, and quite rightly so. I mean, she has got such an amazing voice. It's very distinguishable. As soon as you hear it, you know it's Alf. She was born in Essex, so and in the town of Billericay, which is just down the road from me. She did some sort of punk rock and pub rock blues bands in the southeast Essex area during the late 70s and early 80s, and then obviously her career really took off in 82 with the formation of Yazoo. Obviously, all the tracks and albums that me and Mark have mentioned were just an incredible part of her career. She released a debut album in '84 called Alf. which was produced, and I think there was a songwriting team of Jolie and Swain, and then Alf spawned 3 hit singles. Love Resurrection was one of them, All Cried Out, Invisible, all really good tracks. And then in '85 she appeared on stage with Band Aid alongside with Bowie, Pete Townsend and Geldof on the Let It Be piece. I think she also appeared with Paul Young on there as well. And then there was a couple of other albums. She did a great single with Dave Stewart called Is This Love, and then a second LP, Rain Dancing, which produced more singles. Yeah, just a really, really good time. And then there was a kind of break after that. She kind of had a bit of a personal career evaluation and released Hoodoo in '91. The album sold pretty well in the UK. I think Moya was nominated for a Grammy for the single It Won't Be Long, but it's also, the album marked the beginning of an 8-year fight for Moya to secure complete control of her artistic direction. Like many similar artists like Kirsty MacColl, they were just reluctant to record friendly pop albums simply for the sake of creating chart hits. And her next album was 94 called Essex, which was also a source of controversy. In order for the album to be released, her label, which was now Sony, insisted that certain Essex tracks be re-recorded and reproduced, and that there'd be additional material mixed or remixed to create a more commercial package. Yeah, I hate it when record labels do this. They think they know more than the artist. The artists know better. You know, as Mark Hollis clearly demonstrated with Talk Talk, and Sylvian, with the direction he took after Japan. Yeah, these guys need to be allowed artistic freedom. It's crazy. I think after Essex, Sony released the Greatest Hits compilation of Moya's work, and then there was this massive litigation with them. So she didn't release or record anything for kind of, I think, 8 years after the release of Essex. She did record some vocals with Tricky, I think Ocean Colour Scene, Lightning Seeds, King Brit, and yeah, in '95 she sang backup vocals with Sinead O'Connor for one of Dusty Springfield's last television appearances, Where Is a Woman to Go on the music show, obviously the great Jules, later with Jules Holland. And then in 2002 she was released from Sony, and I think she produced an album called Home Time, and there was a Brit Award nomination for Best Female Vocalist and a Mercury Music Prize nomination. Yeah, this woman's got some serious talent, and I think that, you know, 2010 started seeing her return to her synth pop roots, which kind of culminated in a night studio album called Other, which has kind of been described as intelligent synth pop. And it's co-produced by a guy called Guy Sigsworth. I think it's been quite prominent in her career. But yeah, and then I think 2 years ago she released her second live album, which is called The Other Life Collection, which is taken from the Other Tour, which was the name, say, of the last album she did. You know, incredibly successful woman, incredibly talented woman. I love the fact that, as I say, that she stands by her roots of saying, I want to have more artistic control, despite what the record company's saying. So, yeah, an amazing talent. And, yeah, just a voice that will live on forever. So, yeah, really enjoyed researching more about Alf. She's an incredible talent that we should treasure.
Yazoo were an English synth pop duo from Basildon, Essex, consisting of former Depeche Mode founder member Vince Clarke and Alison Moyet. The duo formed in late '81 after Clarke responded to an advertisement Moyet placed in a British music magazine, although the pair had indeed known each other since their school days in Basildon and through various friends and local bands that they'd both appeared in. Yazoo recorded just 2 successful albums on the Mute record label, Upstairs at Eric's in 1982 and You and Me Both in 1983, and they had 5 hit singles. One of those hit singles, Situation, was a big US hit, albeit a remixed version for the dance clubs. In the UK, Situation was just the B-side to their debut single Only You. Yazoo lasted just 2 years, from 81 to 83. As you know, both Alison Moyet and Vince Clarke went on to have huge success after Yazoo, with Alison Moyet having a stellar solo career and Vince Clarke with Erasure. During a break in Erasure, Yazoo reconciled and undertook a very successful reunion tour called Reconnected in 2008, 25 years after they split, and they released a double live album simply called Reconnected Live. Afterwards, they again parted ways, but this time on better terms, and continued with their own careers. Upstairs at Eric's is the debut album by British synth-pop duo Yazoo, released in the UK on Mute Records in 1982. The album was preceded by 2 top 3 UK singles. The success of these singles helped their debut album reach number 2 in the UK album charts. Strangely, as Vince Clarke had just left Depeche Mode after the release of their debut album Speak and Spell, this was Vince Clarke's second debut release in a year.
So, Yazoo produced a single before an album followed, and that was called Only You, which has got an amazing melody that most people know. It's been run on a couple of TV ads. And they rapidly recorded the album to follow up after that single, which is this, Upstairs at Eric's, an absolute classic album. Mark and I featured it on episode 2 of Electronic Cafe as one of the essential albums of the 80s, and I still stand by that. I think this is an absolute masterpiece of an electronic synth pop album. They were known as Yaz in Canada and US for legal reasons. I don't know the full story, but this album was produced on Mute Records. I think Daniel Miller, who's the label boss at Mute, was meant to be getting involved and help out. And the reason it was called Upstairs at Eric's, it was recorded at Blackwing Studios, and the guy there is Eric Radcliffe. And it's quite funny, actually. There's a lot of naivety when I was researching the beginnings or the making of this album. Vince Clarke had already made Speak and Spell with Depeche Mode at the studio, and he said, I didn't know of any other studios, I just thought this is the place where you record albums. So obviously incredibly young, incredibly naive, but when they turned up, there's a lot of the studio time had already been pre-booked by Fad Gadget. So Vince and Alf had to go in really early, like sometimes at 5:30 in the morning, so get this album put to bed. And you know, it's interesting that I think 30 years later there was a kind of an anniversary meeting of the album, and Vince Clarke said there was no concept, or there wasn't anything that really there was no real plan to the album. It kind of just flowed, which probably explains why this album is so good. Actually, it feels incredibly natural, even though they're using electronics. It's got a lot of soul to it. There are a couple of experimental tracks. I think there's one called I Before E Except After C, where you've got Clarke talking, and also I think Moye and the mother of the producer, Eric, just reading out an instruction manual for one of the pieces of studio equipment. I think you can almost visibly hear Alison Moye try not to laugh. And then there's a great song in here called Goodbye 70s. And Alison said that it was a great way of explaining her disillusionment with how the late 70s punk scene had turned out. She said it's about punk not caring about how you were dressed, and then I discovered that some of my friends that I thought it all really meant something to just saw it as another trend. And that's what this is all about. And the album's music was programmed by Vince. I think he used a Roland MC4 microcomposer and an early CV Gate music sequencer, which is much more Mark's bag and domain. But yeah, I just noticed some interesting stuff from that. The album cover depicts 2 mannequins in a sparsely furnished flat, loft, facing each other at a table, and it was shot by a photographer called Joe Lyons, and it was at his first photo studio in North London. And he kind of said, I've just got some furniture from a furniture designer and got paid with the furniture. So I chose the dummies and started work, a fortuitous series of events. I felt that the high-tech furniture worked really well with the rough look of the room, and I put the cake, which was actually the top of my wedding cake, as the focus on the table, which you can see right there. Critical acclaim this album quite rightly got. Record Mirror placed this album as number 35 on their list of best albums of the 80s, and I think NME and a couple of Sound said it was one of the top 20 albums of the year it was released. I personally think this is one album that I play regularly. There's a certain almost like the Basildon Mafia of Depeche Mode and Yazoo. Great bands. A short-lived career, but there was one more album to come after this.
Your headache to the shape of the 1980s. I'm glad we don't hear you anymore. I'm tired of playing in your fashion war.
You and Me Both was the second and final studio album by the British synth duo Yazoo. Released on Mute Records in July '83, less than 12 months after Upstairs at Eric's. A non-album single, The Other Side of Love, was released between these two albums. The album's title was an ironic reference to the fact that the duo had grown estranged from each other and recorded much of the album separately. And the duo announced their split just a few weeks before the album's release. You and Me Both gave the group a posthumous #1 record in the UK, meaning that singer Alison Moyet could begin a successful solo career while Vince Clarke formed a short-lived project called The Assembly, before going on to huge long-lasting success as part of the synth-pop duo Erasure. The problems within Yazoo had started even before the recording of You and Me Both. Clarke had never thought of Yazoo as being a long-term project and was ready to move on after making Upstairs at Eric's, but having already walked out of Depeche Mode after just one album, he was persuaded by his publishers apparently that it wouldn't be a good idea to do the same thing again only a year later. Even as they began the second album, Alison Moyet said that they both knew that it was over, and Vince had already decided he didn't want to work with her anymore. As with their debut album, Upstairs at Eric's, the record was recorded and produced by Yazoo and Eric Radcliffe. However, unlike Upstairs at Eric's, which was recorded quickly due to the studio already being booked during the daytime, Yazoo were able to record You and Me Both over a longer period of time. That suited Clarke, as that was the way that he liked to work, but it didn't suit Alison Moyet, whose background was in the unpredictability of punk and enjoyed the spontaneous recording process of the first album. Due to a clash of personalities, they were hardly speaking at this stage, and most of the albums were recorded apart from each other. Clarke would go in the mornings and record his bits, and Alison Moyet would go in the evenings. He'd do something, then later on she would do something on top of it. It was like a patchwork album where there was little or no discussion or getting excited about each other's parts. Alison Moyet was also pissed off with Vince Clarke because of his refusal to be involved in any of the promotional work for the album, leaving her to talk to the press alone, something that Vince Clarke freely admitted that he just couldn't be bothered to do. Besides that and the tense atmosphere, Moyet said that the only serious argument that she and Clarke had had during the recording of the album was over the song Happy People, which she refused to sing, and as a result, Clarke ended up singing on the track, the only Yazoo song that he sings lead vocal on. The album cover artwork was a photograph chosen by Moyet showing two Dalmatian dogs fighting while barely visible against a snowy outdoor scene. Moyet chose this graphic as it represented how she felt at the time. Without doubt, Upstairs at Eric's is considered a synth-pop classic, and rightly so. And, because of the circumstances surrounding You and Me Both, it is considered less so. However, You and Me Both still contains some great songs. Nobody's Diary, An Ode to a Boy, written by Alison Moyet, and Mr. Blue, written by Clarke. Alison Moyet re-recorded Ode to a Boy on her Essex solo album produced by Ian Broody from the Lightning Seeds, a faster, more acoustic version, which is the way that she originally envisioned it to be. You and Me Both is still a wonderful album, especially considering the circumstances that it was written and recorded in. Yazoo won their Brit Award for Best Newcomers, they'd already split. Reflecting in 2008 on the split, both Moyet and Clarke agreed that the lack of communication between the pair of them had been a major reason for the breakdown of the partnership. Moyet said that Clarke was creatively very encouraging, very open to hearing her ideas for songs, but the thing that she found most difficult was the lack of warmth and interaction. Clarke has admitted that at the time he lacked the life skills of communication in a relationship, and whereas he felt very confident in the studio, he didn't feel confident chatting with somebody. He put it down to the fact that the duo became popular so rapidly, there had never been any time to build up a proper personal relationship, and they never really knew each other. Although their musical career was short, Yazoo's combination of electronic instrumentation and a soulful female vocal has always been cited as influential, not just in electronic music but also in other genres like in the house music scene that emerged in the mid-80s. Yazoo are also cited as being big influences on bands such as LCD Sound System, La Rue, just to name two. As I mentioned, in 2008, 25 years after splitting, Clark and Moyer reconciled and reformed Yazoo to play a successful tour of the UK and North America, and these live performances were captured on the Reconnected album release. In their short time, Yazoo wrote some great songs, 2 albums, 4 singles, and that was it. And it was clear, in the fact that we're still talking about them now, nearly 40 years later, that their short time together and their small body of work, marrying a soulful voice with the electronics, was incredibly influential and created a long-lasting legacy. And just maybe the conflict and the lack of communication between them both was an important ingredient in the chemistry that made them so brilliant. And here's a strange final thing. If you listen to Erasure's debut album Wonderland, released just 2 years later, it sounds not a million miles away from Yazoo in both the music and in Andy Bell's vocals. Just an observation.
So welcome to the Hot Stuff section of Electronic Cafe. This is the part where Mark and I look at some albums that we're loving right now that are taking quite a bit of time up on our turntables. I'm looking at 3. One is brand new, one is relatively new, and one is about 10 years old that I just rediscovered and just thought, what an amazing album, I need to tell you guys about it. So the first album is the brand new album from the artist Moby, which is called All Visible Objects. I think this came out on Friday, and he really toes around the dance floor on this with some sweeping or orchestral pieces as well. The album starts with a great track called Morningside, and it's kind of uplifting and quite hypnotic. And there's this theme of hypnotic and repetitive vocals in the album, and there's a track called I think it's called Refuge. That's it, and it eventually builds into some kind of 90s rave that we've come to know and love from Moby. And then there's a track called One Last Time where he uses that distinct vocoder on his voice. And then we see kind of quite an activist side of Moby on this album. There's a track called Power Is Taken. And there's a guy called D.H. Pettigrew of the Dead Kennedys, and he's crying out, I'm trying to remember what he says now. It's, we who hate oppression must fight against the oppressors. Power is not shared. Power is taken. And there's like these sirens, frenetic synths that add a sense of urgency to the problem with the current status quo. Really a great track on this album. I love it. And then there's kind of some soft jazzy pieces with a track called Too Much Change, and again it's quite ambient. There's quite a slow burning track called TC. Then there's his album close, which is called All Visible Objects, where the title, which is the title track, and it ends where the album began. There's got nice piano and strings and some nice synth sounds that kind of add a real balance to the whole album. I think Moby's found himself surging around all these influences on this album. It's strongly linked to his love of ambient music and orchestral arrangements. And there's moments of real beauty in this and some moments to dance. It's certainly not a traditional dance floor record. But I guess there's never been anything traditional about Moby anyway. The nice thing as well is Moby's donating all the proceeds of this album to a ton of charities. So, God bless you, Moby. You've produced a good album. I would suggest you guys check it out. And also, you're doing something good for charity. So that's my first recommendation in the Hot Stuff section. It's Moby and All Visible Objects. Check it out. So the second album in the Hot Stuff section is the oldie I spoke about. I think this was out in 2010. It's an album that has been dear to my heart for a long time. It's called Maximum Balloon. And it's by a guy on TV on the radio, which is another great band. And he's a kind of guitarist producer called, and he's quite an extraordinary talent actually, a guy called Dave Sitek. He decided his own singing wasn't good enough to do an album where he wanted to get a bunch of pop music out of his system. So he had he's got an impressive bunch of connections. He must have just flicked through his talent-filled Rolodex to give voice to this project. He produces a pretty consistent musical backing throughout the record, there's no question of that. But he works within quite a relatively limited scope in terms of instrumentation. So there's guitars, there's bass, synths, drum machines with the odd horn part thrown in. It's basically the same sonic palette as TV on the Radio, which has been so successful. But it's texturally free of more abrasive aspects of their sound, I think. I think, you know, it's kind of less abrasive, and it's shying away from this. With TV on the Radio, there's always weighty subject matter that sees each of their albums treated like a State of the Nation address. So the guitars on this album scratch out a classic sort of chic funk sound, the synths glisten or buzz in the style you'd expect of a really good pop record. And it's bristling with sexuality befitting of the rhythms in this album. There's an opener called I think it's called Groove Me. And we've got can't even say his name, Theopolis London, saying I want you to groove me, baby, over a really punchy bass beat, which is and there's like there's trebly hi-hats that are almost breathless in themselves with tuning mute guitar and lively keyboard riffs. There's a track in here called If You Return, which is brilliant because it's including Yukumi Nagano from Little Dragons, the Swedish band, and it's tracks like this that demonstrate, I just think how liberated Sitek is by the notion of the record being a one-off. So, you know, he's free of the concern of recreating the tracks live in an arena, and he's sort of free to kind of put sounds and experimentation on this that he probably wouldn't be so easy to do on a TV and a radio album. And there's like I think he knows when to strip a song back. There's a Georgia Moroder sort of sound track with Carano for the Yeah called Communion, and it's got a great feeling that should really opens up the feel of the song in a real good disco way. It's brilliant. And one of the biggest contributions on here is David Byrne. He's got a track called Wrestling Apartments, and it's kind of, that track is so indebted to post Remaining Like Talking Heads, but it's just good fun all the same. I think ultimately that's a disclaimer that could apply to the record as a whole. It's a dizzyingly good synth pop record, and while the contributions even from TV on the Radio help, I think this album is really about a great producer, songwriter, just exhibiting his talents, just free from the pressure of his day job. Just a great album. So I would thoroughly recommend, if you can get a copy of this on vinyl, please do. It just sounds so good. It's an album I had on CD for quite a long time, and as I've been rebuilding my vinyl collection, I just thought I bought it and I just had to tell you guys about it. Definitely worth checking out. I say the album's called Maximum Balloon, with a ton of great artists contributing to Dave Sitek from TV on the Radio. Hope you enjoy it, and if you do get it, let me know what you think of it.
Yeah, the wise don't fail. For years we camping in. Come on, I just got this feeling deep inside of me. Groove me, baby. I want you to catch my love, thinking on for something.
And the final album on our Hot Stuff section is focusing on, for me, one of the greatest artists of all time. I was fortunate enough to see him play live a couple of years ago at the O2, and that man is David Byrne, and this is the album. So it's a recording of that tour that was done at the Hudson Theatre in New York. Absolutely amazing. I was fortunate enough to see him at the O2. I've been to thousands of concerts. It was the greatest concert I've ever been to. It just ticked every single box in terms of music quality, style, musicianship, choreography, genius idea. I just, honestly, I came away that night going, best concert I've ever been to. My wife agreed as well. Just on another level. The guy is such a genius. Sadly, I went and saw a band. I won't name them because it'd be unfair on them. About 2 weeks after, and I was just so disappointed because the bench had been set so high. by Mr. Byrne. You know, the guy's done amazing stuff all his career. I mean, 36 years ago, Stop Making Sense was voted the greatest live concert video of all time, and the idea behind that was bringing out 9 musicians, one for each track. And then he just has this remarkable ability to kind of keep coming up with new ideas. And although this show shares the title of his latest album, or his last album, those songs make up less than a quarter of the 21 tracks on this. There's obviously great stuff like Burning Down the House, Once in a Lifetime, Psycho Killer isn't on there. But there's 12 musicians, including Byrne. The lighting was stark. I don't think there was even any coloured lights until midway through the show. They're all in grey suits, grey shirts, all barefoot, with the instruments harnessed to their bodies, and the musicians are in pretty much constant motion throughout the gig. And you know, Byrne is just a gracious ringleader throughout. He's always the front man, he's always in charge, but he's always giving a seat and spotlight to the musicians for solos, etc. It ends with the 1985 hit Road to Nowhere, and you know, it's a fitting close to a stunning show from an artist whose much vaunted quirkiness masks his really intensely focused and disciplined creativity. He's a vital and compelling and deeply relevant artist to this day, even in his late 60s. You know, the energy he put in the show I saw him at was just incredible, and he just continues to challenge the audience in this and himself. So thoroughly recommend this. Absolutely amazing album by an amazing artist. And if you didn't go to the show, check it out anyway, because you'll get to just understand what creative genius is and how good that concert sounded. And if you did go, this will just remind you of one of the greatest nights of your life. So please check this out. And it's David Byrne live. And that's it from me in the hot stuff section. Mark, what are you checking out, buddy?
She looks down at me, says, I don't want to die. Man, blind, 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 blind,
Rehumanizer is the 7th studio album by Maserati, released in 2015. Maserati are an American band formed in 2000 in Athens, Georgia. A big sounding prog synth record originally conceived as exclusively instrumental. Their sound is often characterized by soaring guitar hooks, driving rhythms and interlaced with synthesizers, arpeggios and electronics. The AllMusic Guide describes Rehumanizer as an album pleasantly lost between dance rock and spacey synthscapes. Maserati are a band obsessed with process, the process of marrying the past to the future. Rehumanizer is the most accomplished example of that to date, a marriage of man and machine that plays out like a supergroup comprising of Gary Newman, Cluster and a bit of Pink Floyd, a true alliance of the past and the future. Rehumanizer travels even further down that road, its very title hinting that it's a more organic sound. The album finds Maserati sounding more rock than they had done in some time, with guitars and synthesizers in perfect harmony. Some songs are up to 10 minutes long and are like beautiful soundtracks. Maserati have also just released their 8th album in 2020, so if you like the sound of Rehumanizer, I would urge you to check this album out, and if you like it, you can then go back or forwards through their catalogue to find out more and discover something you like. My next Hot Stuff album choice is an album called Lost in the Dream World by Betamax, released in 2019. This album is their 7th studio album, and basically Betamax is the moniker used by Nick Morey from Pittsburgh in the USA, and Nick Morey writes electronic synthwave music. Lost in the Dream World is an album dedicated to the synthwave music scene and a total blast back into the 1980s, both in the music style of the synthesizers and beats, a sound carefully crafted with both original vintage analog and digital synthesizers. Even the Dayglow album artwork pays homage to so many 80s album covers. The album is both new and nostalgic sounding at the same time, and the execution by Nick Morey is absolutely spot on. I've seen Betamax described as what Depeche Mode would have sounded like if Vince Clarke hadn't have left, or maybe a classic 80s John Carpenter film soundtrack. If big slabs of retro sounding 80s synthwave tunes are your thing, go check this album out. I think you'll like it. Physical formats can be purchased on the Bandcamp platform.
Dream of the way I can be yours tonight. Sing of the way I love you. I can never sleep at night. Oh, sad. Oh no, you're gone. So little self-control.
My next choice is an album called Beautiful Desolation, released by Paul Thomas Saunders in 2014. After a number of EPs, this is his debut full-length album release. Paul Thomas Saunders originates from Leeds in the north of England and is gifted with a clear high falsetto. Beautiful Desolation is a collection of emotional, ethereal, anthemic and lofty tracks, a record that goes well beyond his relatively young years. The album is full of multi-layered soaring synths, grand pianos, big drums, thrumming basses, wafting guitars and organs, and is massively loud to full effect. It is simultaneously cinematic and melodic. You can hear traces of the late 80s in its production, but it is definitely not a nostalgic record. Beautiful Desolation is dream pop in the finest sense of the term. It is carefully and magnificently crafted in both the instrumentation and in the gorgeous singing and the melodies. Comparisons have been made to Vangelis and Jeff Buckley's Grace, but this album stands on its own 2 feet. It is an artful and eloquent electronic soundscape, and certainly a record that needed to be painted onto this grand canvas. I love this album. It sounds wonderful on vinyl, and I feel it's an album that you really should be checking out. Over the last month, we've been running our subscriber competition where every one of our subscribers was entered into a draw to win the limited edition Rusty Egan Welcome to the Dance Floor LP, signed by the legendary Rusty Egan himself. All you had to do to be in the draw was to subscribe. The winner was randomly selected, and now I'll pass you over to Rusty to announce the winner.
Hello, Ondina from Michigan. I have sent you in the post a little note and a limited edition numbered gold vinyl album, Welcome to the Dance Floor. And inside there is also a little booklet with all the words to all the songs, 90% written by me. You don't actually have to take it out of the shrink wrap vinyl. It will be up online streaming, etc. Because there's only 500 of these in the whole world. And Andy McNabb has got one of them. So thank you for entering into liking, following the channel. And you can contact me at twitch.tv/Rusty Egan every weekend and get into the chat. Thank you and enjoy.
Congratulations on Dina, well done. We hope that you enjoy the Rusty Egan Welcome to the Dance Floor LP, and hard luck to everyone else. We really appreciate you subscribing. But keep watching the Electronic Cafe, because we'll be running more competitions like this in the future to give away some more great content.
So congratulations, Ondina, for being the winner of that amazing prize. Really hope you enjoy it. I know it's on its way to you. Rusty, thank you, mate, for sending it, putting the message in, and just helping Mark and I on this show. It's really appreciated. For all our viewers, we know that you love great music. So on Saturday, and I think Sundays as well sometimes, tune into Rusty Egan's Twitch TV show. online, so check it out, and then there's a message board on there as well, so you can talk to Rusty as well while he plays some amazing music for a couple of hours, 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock Saturdays and Sundays. So that's Rusty Egan on Twitch TV. Thank you for watching the show. Mark and I are massively grateful. We really enjoyed putting this episode together. But I also can't wait for the day then we're both sitting here on the Electronic Cafe sofa. We've got some really good plans to do more competitions, start hopefully doing some great interviews with some very big names in the industry. So keep watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And if you haven't shared this show with like-minded people, please do that as well. We'd be really grateful. But we can't thank you enough for the great messages we're getting and the great support. You know, it's fantastic. So keep enjoying your music, and most importantly, stay safe. And Mark and I'll see you next time at the Electronic Cafe. Take care.
Thanks again for watching the Electronic Cafe and for all of your support and for all of your positive comments. Clearly, there are many of you out there that are lovers of electronic music and are interested in what we have to say and our album reviews, and for that we are really, really grateful. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this episode, and please also don't forget to subscribe. Leave us a comment. And why don't you tell us what you are listening to? We'd love to know. Thanks again for watching the Electronic Cafe, and see you next time. Take care.